Well, this morning on Media and Society, as interest rates reached the highest levels in over 5 years, we're asking, is the media doing a good enough job to simplify it for you, the consumer? And recommendations of the names of potential SABC board members have been made. We discuss who they are and what it all means for the public. Well, hello and welcome to Media and Society right here on SABC News, independent and impartial. My name is Naledi Muleo. This is where we look at the intersection between media and audiences. And as always, the show is really not complete without your say. So connect with us via our social media channels and share your views and concerns about how the media works and what we feed you. Hashtag SABC Media Society, or give us a call on 011-714-0661 or 0662. Well, we start here. Academic research by Liesel paper, which was published by Stellenbosch University, suggests that financial reporting is one of the most vulnerable sectors of journalism. But it also says that financial journalists rarely simplify financial and economics jargon and largely rely on press releases without much scrutiny. So today we discuss this as there was an interest rate hike just on Thursday this week. And we also ask, have journalists managed to simplify this for you as the viewer? Do you understand what these financial shifts mean for you and how they impact you? Joining us for this discussion is SABC News journalist and anchor Gloria Sefako, as well as Sbusiso Majola from Business Report. We're also joined by director and chief economist at Econometrics, Azar Jamleen. Let's take a look at this package, though, just to set the scene for you.
As usual, the repo rate projection from the quarterly projection model remains a broad policy guide, changing from meeting to meeting in response to new data and risks. This backdrop, the MPC decided to increase the repurchase rate by 75 basis points to 7% per year with effect from the 25th of November 2022. 3 members of the committee preferred the announced increase. 2 members preferred a 50 basis points increase. The level of the repurchase rate is now above the level prevailing before the start of the pandemic. The revised repurchase rate remains supportive of credit demand in the near term, while raising rates to levels more consistent with the current view of inflation and risks to it.
Well, that there is the governor of the South African Reserve Bank. That was the announcement that he made on Thursday, when he essentially gave us the news that the interest rates in the country would be seeing a hike of 75 basis points. But what does that mean? So when you see the governor of the South African Reserve Bank giving us that announcement, do you as the everyday South African understand what he's talking about? Does the media do a good enough job of breaking it down, explaining to you how that is going to impact your daily life? I am joined in this discussion now by SABC News journalist and anchor Gloria Sefako. Gloria, a good morning to you. Thank you so much for joining us. I think let's start with the simplicity. When the governor Lesitja Kganyago sits there and makes that announcement, right? Is there an understanding that South Africans may not very well understand what he's talking about?
Absolutely, because with say the economics language, you hear a lot of jargon, and it's not for everyone, and it's up to us as reporters to try and tell the story, and without going beyond the jargon, beyond the numbers, then we're not telling a story. So what we do usually, mainly what we do is we'll go through expectations firstly. This is what we expect when we're going into the week of the, say, to cover the MPC meeting. What are the issues? And when that number then comes, is then that we put it into perspective for our viewers to say, okay, a 75 basis points increase, what is that? What does it mean? Because without explaining what this means, then the number itself does not mean anything, does not tell a story. But once we get beyond that number to say, okay, we're going through this difficult economic time at the moment where the cost of living is high, people are watching every cent they spend. When now you say, your debt repayments are going up, interest rates are debt repayments. When they are going up, what does that mean? Then we tell the story according to that, to say, for an average viewer, for a pensioner or a worker who's struggling to make ends meet, what does it mean? Then that's where the story is. The number itself does not tell a story.
Yeah, the thing is, though, is that it certainly is one thing to talk about the expectations and what the numbers mean, but that jargon does get to a point where it's speaking over people's heads. I mean, is there a real effort on a daily basis as a journalist to really try and make that information more accessible? So when we talk about 75 basis points or even just the MPC meeting, what the MPC is, how difficult is it to get that across to the public?
I think that the basic thing is communications is about getting the message across. And once you use jargon that people are not going to understand, then they are not going to get what the story is about. So on a daily basis, when we meet in the mornings for our diary meetings, what we discuss is how best to tell the story. How do we get to the bottom of what an average person out there would want to know about this MPC meeting? How do we explain it? Like I said, like now with the current economic situation, most people are concerned about the cost of living. So how do we then best tell the story that a person out there would want to know? For example, if you are paying your bond or you have a car loan, at that time, you're concerned about, okay, how much is this going to mean? I'm going to pay more for, how am I going to make ends meet? So we tell the story according to what someone out there would want to know. The numbers themselves, the jargon does not tell a story. The journalism is about communication, and if you can't communicate a message, if you're going to put jargon in there that no one is going to understand, then you may just as well have left it. And the best way is go down, explain what it means, because at the end of the day, it's the message that is important.
I do think that there's an admission that needs to be made by media practitioners, and I'm going to start with myself and say, as someone who's been in the media for a very long time, I've had to cover economic and business stories myself, and a lot of it has gone over my head at some points in my career. But I've had to share a message nonetheless. And this is essentially what I'm trying to get at, is that do we have a problem where we do have some journalists that may not even understand the financial and economic news that we share with the public themselves?
That's true. But I think, you need to understand who you're talking to, understand your audience. And for us, especially at SABC, with a diverse...
Morning. Dr. Jameen, okay, thanks. I'm on
diversity of viewers.
Yeah.
We need to try and accommodate everyone. You may be talking to...
Sorry, we've got someone coming in there. Please, can we just hold that? Go ahead, Laura, yes.
Yes, okay. So, like I'm saying, as SABC, we have a diversity of viewers. We are in a country with huge inequalities, different levels of education. So we need to try and bring the message to a level where when a CEO of a company is watching in an office somewhere, they're able to get a message of what the story is. And also, someone that's sitting, say, in at home somewhere looking for a job, they need to be able to also be able to understand the message that you're trying to put across, what is important at this time. It is true that some of the jargon can go beyond our heads, and that's why we also have relations with experts in this field. And if you do not understand the story, you are not going to be able to tell that story. So if I come across, say, a concept that I myself do not understand, I'm able to pick up a call and call an expert in the matter. It could be an economist or in whatever field that we're working on that day, and say, I'm reading about this, and what I don't get is 1, 2, 3. Can you explain that? And once I'm able to understand that myself, then I'm able to tell a story. Because if you do not understand the story, then you will not be able to tell it.
Surely there's a detriment, though, when you have journalists that are covering financial and economic stories and may not understand themselves in some areas what they are looking at and what they're feeding the viewer. There's a detriment to it, because we talk a lot in this country about a lack of financial education in our schooling and for the public, right? So I want to talk a little bit about that. What's the detriment of journalists not getting it right?
Yeah, if you don't understand, it's always best to better understand what the topic is before you can attempt to tell a story. If you're not going to be able to communicate a message if you yourself are not sure of what the issues are. So yes, there's that people may not be able to understand. But if you want to do justice to yourself as a professional and the channel that you represent, the best is be honest to yourself. If you don't understand an issue, make sure that before you can put that script in there, before you can attempt to even write the script, understand the issue. Which is why it's important then to always have this. I usually find that experts, economists that we communicate with, usually would be happy to explain these issues. So it's like preparing yourself to cover. Say for example, you would know, like next week we're expecting the quarterly labor force from Stats SA to come out, which is an important piece of data that's coming out, because we have high levels of unemployment.
Yes.
But if you're going to walk in there, if you're going to walk in there without understanding what to look out for as a journalist, then you fail before you start.
Yeah.
So the important thing is prepare yourself. If you come across issues that you do not understand in the previous releases that have been there, then you're able to get help yourself before you can actually go and cover the story.
Yeah.
By the time you cover the story, you must be knowing what am I looking out for? Because if you're just going to look out for, okay, unemployment has gone up to this, it's not in which sectors has it gone up to. What are the factors in those industries that have, say, for example, shed jobs? Then you when you're prepared, you're able to tell the story, and you're able to know what is it that you don't understand, what is it that you're able to ask for help.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Let me bring in Mr. Azar Jamin here. He's the chief economist at Econometrics. Azar, good morning to you. Thank you so much for your time.
Good morning.
I'm keen to. You obviously get a lot of requests from media practitioners who say, okay, the interest rates have gone up 75 basis points, or inflation has gone up and now we're sitting at 7.6%, which was just this Wednesday. And come and comment on it and tell us about it. In your view, though, when you get those requests, have you found that journalists know what to ask, that they even understand the concepts themselves?
I think it varies very much depending on which journalist actually interviews me. There are those, such as Gloria, who know exactly what to ask, and it makes life quite easy. At other times, one appreciates that the journalist doesn't fully understand it, and then it's incumbent upon myself to try and assume what they are trying to ask and what they try and the message they're trying to get.
Is that not a concern, though, where you are playing that game of assumption that you're talking about, that I'm going to assume what you're wanting to ask, what you're struggling to get across? Is that not a concern, that you have people that have a platform but may not understand the big, important concepts that have a really big impact on people's daily lives?
It could be a concern, but as I say, I think it's incumbent upon myself as a so-called expert to try and impute what people in their daily lives really need to know. and to overcome those kind of shortfalls. And that is why, I mean, through the years, I've had good interviews and interviews where I've felt that, I haven't been asked the right questions. There are times also when I myself may not be on form to respond appropriately. But, one tries to do it. And I think at the end of the day, it does serve its purpose. And I've been very encouraged in recent times by the quality of the interviews that I've been having.
Well, there certainly is the ability of a journalist to interview an economist like Dr. Azar Jammine and be able to where you say, ask the questions that are relevant. It's another thing, though, which is the real responsibility of journalists, is to make that information accessible to the public, right? And I wonder, Gloria, I'm going to bring you in here. If you found that we have made business news so highbrow that it's almost intimidating to listen to.
We try to not make it about, because once you put numbers in there and numbers don't exactly make sense to everyone, then that way, then you're going above, you're not transmitting the message that you want to transmit. So what we do is bring it down. What are those numbers saying? The number itself, it's not the story. The story is behind that number. What is that number saying? As SABC, we actually, because of our audience, because of the diversity of our audience, we don't have a choice but to actually talk to our people, bring it down, not even bring it down, talk to what is important to them. What is important to, say, a pensioner that's sitting at home with their life savings in their account when they say the MPC is going up. Why is that important? Is that story important to tell now that people are going through what they're going through, or is what's important now? And we've heard that because of the high cost of living that is going on now, because of the increases in different things, people are struggling to make ends meet to an extent that we're seeing credit extension actually going up. People are taking up credit to supplement their incomes to try and continue with the standard of living that they're used to. So what is important now? With interest rates going up, debt repayments going up, that person that's going to the bank to get a credit card to try and make ends meet, it's important for them to then know, if you're doing that, what does that mean for you? What will that mean for you next month? Next month, when you'll be paying up that debt that you've just taken up to supplement, the house that you're paying for, the car that you're paying for, the amounts that you're paying would have gone up. You may struggle to pay up that debt. So it's important to bring up those issues in the story to try and say, this is what is important about this MPC decision that we're talking about. And unless you go there, then the story about just numbers, then it does not get through. It does not make sense to anyone.
I want to take a short break and then continue the discussion. And when we come back, we'll talk a little bit about what needs to be done to continue making financial news and business news more accessible to the public, particularly when you've got economists like Dr. Azar Jammine who are saying, tighten your belts. 2022 was a tough year. 2023 may not be easier. But how do we make that information more accessible, particularly in a country that isn't all English speaking? So how do we make that information accessible in all our languages? We'll have more of that discussion on the other side of this. Welcome back to Media and Society. We continue our discussion asking if journalists are doing a good enough job of breaking down for you, the viewer, business news and how it impacts you on a daily basis. Give us a call on 011-714-0661 or 0662. Really keen to hear your thoughts. And of course, you can also get onto Twitter and use the hashtag SABC Media Society. Still in conversation with SABC business news journalist and anchor Gloria Sefako, as well as Director and Chief Economist at Econometrics, Dr. Azar Jammine. Dr. Jammine, I'm going to come back to you a little bit. How often have you found that you are asked to break down discussions on air, right? Have you had those opportunities where you've been asked, what does this mean for me? Does that happen enough?
Oh, it happens almost continuously. I mean, the most classic question that I ask, what does this mean for the man in the street? And there are times when one has to reply, well, I've just tried to explain to you what it means for the man in the street. And clearly, that message may not have gone through, and or either that, or the journalist, who may be relatively inexperienced, is following a particular script and doesn't fully understand the story, and comes out with exactly the question that had been prepared before, but which had probably been answered by myself a little earlier.
That's a big thing that you've just said, though, Dr. Jameen, that a journalist may be following a script and just going through the questions that essentially are listed for that journalist to ask. And then I say to you, Gloria, then you've got the reality that our people don't all speak English. And business news is very English most of the time. I mean, where do we strike that balance so we can ensure that when something happens in our economy, we're able to communicate it to the people that are going to be mostly impacted by it?
What Dr. Jameen is saying is true. Experience counts a lot, and like I said before, preparation also counts for a lot. So if as a young journalist doing a story, say for example you're doing an MPC story for the first time, if you're just going to go to the Reserve Bank and start listening to what the governor is saying without proper understanding of what to expect, that's where the message gets lost. And if you're going to go and call Dr. Jameen and say, explain this for me, but you yourself are not sure exactly what you're asking, then that's where you may lose your story from that, because you don't know what to expect. But when you know what you're expecting from this, what kind of story you're expecting to tell from this, then you're able to say, okay, this is the story. If you somehow get lost in the whole thing, you're able to also find yourself to say, no, this is what I was expecting to find, and I'm not finding this. You're able to ask an expert to say, this is what I was expecting coming into this, but I'm not seeing this. Why is that? Then they're able to put things into perspective for you to understand. Like I said, if you don't understand what you're talking about, you're not going to make the next person understand what you're talking about. And if you have a diversity of viewers with different expectations from your reports, then if you don't have that story together yourself, then you're not going to be able to tell it, and that's where you will fail.
Yeah. Dr. Jameen, I'm actually going to bring the same question to you and say the reality is business news is very English, particularly in South Africa. And we have 11 official languages. We have a lot of people that may not understand English, as comfortably as the rest of us do. But when there are shifts in inflation numbers or the repo rate, they're the people that are going to be feeling the pinch the hardest, right? I mean, have you found that we're doing enough of a job to bring that conversation down, even from a language point of view, just from your observation?
You know, it's a very challenging task that journalists have in that regard. Personally, I don't believe that you can do enough to try and convey the message to people whose English is not up to the standard required. And this is very unfortunate. You see, the Afrikaners, for example, are able to bring that across because the population of Afrikaans-speaking people has been educated sufficiently well to be able to understand what is going on. But when you come to the Black African languages, that is really a very big challenge. And I don't know how one overcomes that without actually improving the levels of education of the people, especially in rural areas, who don't have access to English and Afrikaans so easily. And I mean, this is one of the challenges, one of the weaknesses of the South African economy generally, because those people then are left to be financially relatively illiterate and fall behind in terms of daily living conditions. And this is one of the sources of the damage that high levels of inequality are causing, and one of the sources of the inequality itself.
I suppose what I'd like to do, just as we wrap up, Dr. Dlamini, is get a call to action for you, and a call to action particularly for journalists, where we do have a massive responsibility, where not only do we have to work at understanding business news, but we have to be able to bring it to people so that they understand how they prepare themselves for what is going to be, according to some economists such as yourself, 2023, that might be a very difficult financial year, but we need to be able to bring that information to them. What is your call to action to journalists?
My call to action to journalists is to basically build up experience, and certainly to interact with people like myself, to get to understand what is going on, because the more you understand the economics of it, the easier it is to actually explain that in simple terms to the man in the street. And that concerns myself, but it also concerns journalists in the same way, I would imagine.
Yeah. Gloria, your call to action for our colleagues.
Yeah, like what Dr. Dlamini just said, let's, as journalists, understand the issues. If we don't understand, let's not be afraid to ask questions. Let's not be afraid to reach out to different experts to be able to explain the issues to us, so that we also understand the issues before we can tell the story. Like you're saying with the issue of language, we have I usually do stories for the SABC bulletins, where I would have to translate the economics language, and if I don't understand those issues, I'm not going to be able to tell the next person what it means. So the best thing is, let's just equip ourselves, and there's no such thing as a stupid questions. Let's ask those questions and be able to tell those stories in a way that matters, in a way that makes a difference in people's lives.
Yes. Yeah. I like that. There's no such thing as a stupid question. And that's what I'm taking home today as a media practitioner myself. And that is, if I don't know the question that I'm asking, the viewer probably doesn't know either. That's to always hold that responsibility. Thank you so much to my guest, SABC Business News journalist and anchor Gloria Sefako, as well as a director and chief economist at Econometrics, Dr. Azar Dlamini. You're still watching Media and Society. Let's take a short break. We're back with another discussion where we discuss the candidates for the SABC board on the other side of this. Welcome back. So 12 name recommendations have been shared to form the new SABC board, and they include journalists, media academics, and lawyers. Are these the right people to take the SABC forward? The SABC has been without a board for over a month because of what has been said to be a strict security vetting process. Now, if the proposed names are endorsed, then the new board may indicate a new era for the SABC. But we're asking you, if the persons shortlisted have, according to you, what it takes to indeed propel the SABC to greater heights. And we have that conversation now right here in studio with my guests. We're joined by Thandi Smith, the head of programs at Media Monitoring Africa. Thandi, good morning to you. Thanks for joining us. We're also joined by Sisintombi Khumalo from the Communication Workers Union, representing a lot of the workers here at the SABC. Good morning to you.
Good morning. Hi.
And another union representing workers at the SABC is BEMAU. That, of course, is the Broadcasting, Electronic Media and Allied Workers Union. The president of the organization, Harness Dubuisson, joins us via Zoom. Harness, good morning to you. Welcome to Media and Society.
Good morning. Thank you.
Always good to have you guys with us. Thandi, I want to start with you. The SABC has been without a board for a while. Is that an issue? Is it a big problem for the organization?
Yeah. It's a very big problem, especially because what it seems to have resulted in is no one actually knew what to do in the case where we didn't have a board. You know, there was questions around the process and who's the sort of decision maker in the case where there's no board, which seemed to have lay in the hands of the CEO, but it wasn't a clear process, and I think that's where the issue is as well. I mean, we've got one of the most key institutions in the country, the public broadcaster, without a final level of governance, that decision-making process, and that is a big issue. We see where other state-owned entities are without a board for a lengthy period of time, there's a lot of outcry, there are legal challenges, there's calls for transparency, but we didn't see the same kind of urgency when it came to dealing with the SABC board, and that is a problem. We're heading up to the December conference, the ANC December conference, and to have a public broadcaster without that governance structure is a very urgent matter.
It's a big thing that you've said there. We're heading towards the National Congress of the governing party without a board as an organization. I mean, is that a concern for the Communications Workers Union?
Definitely, because the boards generally, we must indicate that they are the highest decision maker in the structures of the organization, and they are the accounting authority. And if you don't have the accounting authority and the executive authority taking time to appoint the accounting authority, then leaves the CEO alone to be taking decisions, because remember, the CEO is operational, but there are certain things in terms of the delegation of authority that the CEO can be able to implement and do on his own capacity, but there's certain things that he will need guidance and seek a mandate coming from the board, which really does raise a call for concern, not having a board for quite such a long time.
Honest, you and I have had this discussion before, right here on this show, and I particularly remember you saying, well, not having a board doesn't actually impact the operations of the organization so much. I mean, do you still hold that view?
Well, in the short term, of course, it does not impact. It is not ideal for the SABC to not have a board, but it is not such a big crisis at the end of the day. For as long as it's not for a prolonged, for a protracted period. The board is not operational. It does not deal with the SABC's operational issues on a day-to-day basis. The board is there as a accounting authority. It is there to oversee, to ensure that there's governance. And it's not as if the board is sitting there every single day at the SABC and then make decisions that is operational. The board is responsible for the strategy and, of course, as I've said, for the governance of the SABC. It is a problem that we don't have a board, but it is not a crisis as such if that is only in the short term. It's not ideal. It should be resolved as soon as possible, but it is possible for the SABC to operate in the short term without a board.
Yeah. Let's look at some of the candidates now, because we've got some interesting names on that list, and we're going to put it up on the screen. One of the names that stood out for me was Mr. Mpotsedu. His father was on the board previously. He's been a broadcaster with the SABC in the past as well. I mean, Nobi, I want to start with you. What do you make of him as a candidate? There he is on the screen right now.
Okay, I think one of the things that we had said as the organization is that one critical important thing is that the leaders that are brought as board members into the institution are leaders that are supposed to be ethically and able to take this organization forward. I mean, the organization does need leaders. For example, like Mpotsedu. Yes, we do hear that there's issues of integrity and all of that, but we are saying that because of the prolonged process, the organization needs to have that level of the accounting authority, and I think we are comfortable with the level of the accounting authority having been brought in with Umpo as well.
Thandi, I'm going to bring you in because Mpho has been a broadcaster within the SABC for a very long time. I think SABC News viewers will remember Question Time on SABC News. He certainly has the understanding of what it means to be in a newsroom. Is he a good candidate in your view?
Well, I think that what we have seen is that the skills that are brought by candidates like Mbotedu are needed on the board. You know, you need a board that understands the operations, and although they're not the decision-making body for operations, you do need that level of skill in understanding how an organization such as the SABC functions. Because without that knowledge, you can't make decisions on a governance and accountability level. But you know, as has already been said, we do need to ensure that the board and each and every single board member has a certain level of integrity and is able to conduct business and make decisions ethically and independently. And so that kind of thing you can only see once someone has taken position and once they're confronted with the job that they need to do. So yes, we do see a balance of skills, broadcasting skills, and newsroom skills are valuable to have on the board, but it is whether you know, that experience and those skills match the same level of ethics and accountability, which we need to keep a close eye on.
Yeah, we're going to take a short break, but we're going to continue this discussion and we're going to look at that list some more and really go through some of the candidates, particularly those that stand out. So do stay with us. You're watching Media and Society.
With the creamy decadence of double cream bliss from Clover. Yogurt has never been so irresistible. Made with love by Clover.
Every day is a news day in South Africa. Every day. But what the Watchdog does is tell you why the news matters, give you context and perspective, as well as informed analysis, while getting the newsmakers to account. Every weeknight, 8 to 9 p.m., only on the SABC News channel. Independent, impartial.
Welcome back. Well, you're still tuned into Media and Society with myself, Naledi Moleon. Remember, you can be part of the conversation by giving us a call on 011-714-0661 or tweet us using the hashtag SABC Media Society. We're talking about the SABC Board, the recommended names and the expectations. And for that, we're joined in studio by Thandi Smith, the head of programs at Media Monitoring Africa. We're joined by Ndombi Kumalo from the Communication Workers Union, as well as the president of BEMAU, which is the Broadcasting, Electronic Media and Allied Workers Union, Honest Buisson, who joins us via Zoom. We're still looking at those candidates. We're going to keep that list on the screen so you can look at who those 12 recommended names are. One that certainly stands out when you look at that list is Patiswa Mahopeni. She, of course, was running the news department here at the SABC for quite a while, left under, I suppose, the stormy clouds here at the SABC. Honest, what do you make of having Patiswa on the board of the South African Broadcasting Corporation?
If you would allow me, I just want to go quickly back to Mbotedu.
Sure, go ahead.
I think that, apart from the fact that he's quite a presentable and attractive young man, he doesn't stop there. If we remember question time, he has the ability to ask questions, hard-hitting questions, without fear, without favor. And I think that is the kind of expertise and skills that we need to bring to the board. Would be people that would not be yes man and just agree with whoever is going to be the chairperson of the board, but be able to ask those questions independently. In terms of Patiswa Mahopeni, we believe that she has the expertise. She's a broadcaster. She's been the head of news. She left the SABC. We know under what circumstances. That is, of course, still a question that is bothering us as to why the SABC has settled with her in such a secret settlement agreement that the world and everyone who wants to know does not know about. That we hope that the new board that can overturn the decision of the previous board to make known that settlement agreement, that they will do that so that her name can be properly cleared, and there is not that little cloud that would be hanging around her. But she has got the necessary expertise. We believe that she's a people's person. We have seen that during the Section 189 process, that she's got a heart, she's got a feeling for people, and we believe that she's a very, very good candidate for the board. In fact, being the chairperson.
Yeah, and then enter a very interesting character. Okay, actually, let me let you respond firstly to Patiswa.
On the issue of Patiswa, thank you so much. You know, on our side, as Communications Workers Union, we when we saw Patiswa's name, we were very excited, in fact, we must indicate, purely based on the fact that we actually classified her as a 360-degree well-rounded board member now coming into the SABC. Why? Because she has gone through a number of intimidation and victimization. She knows the pain of the workers, and we think that her going into the role of being a board member, she will then be able to independently take decisions and also be able to help the workers, as and when they bring their pleas towards certain things that they would be needing. So indeed, she becomes then the 360-degree well-rounded board member. Thank you.
Interesting. Yeah, Thandi?
Yeah, I think that, holding a position in the operations of the SABC is very different to holding a position at board level. But, I have to agree with my colleagues that there is a certain level of experience and skill that Patiswa would bring to the board. But there are concerns about transparency and accountability, given that we don't know exactly what the result of the settlement agreement, and there is that cloud hanging over what actually transpired in that process, and I think that is going to sit at the back of people's minds. But we wish her luck in the role. Once the names get approved, which we hope they will do very soon.
Yeah.
But again, it's left to be seen how the different level of skills will be used at board level.
I really want to get to this particular personality that is in that list of recommended board members, Magdalene Munsami. I mean, we in the past few months we've been, and there she is, right? We've known her for the most part as Kelly Khumalo's lawyer in the Senzo Mayiwa case, but she has quite a political history behind her, having been with the ANC, then with the EFF, and now becoming this legal personality that certainly is able to make some waves. What do you make of her on the SABC board?
Thank you very much. I think her coming into the board, with that legal expertise, it will really help the organization immensely, purely based on the fact that we do need the SABC, firstly, to be stabilized, coming from the 15th of October to date, purely based on the fact that the SABC could not necessarily, in terms of corporate governance, to take certain decisions. But her coming in, she would also be able, come with that firmness and come with that independence as well, in ensuring that the board becomes effective and efficient, in ensuring that the gaps that were there between the 15th and up until the appointment and coming into the board, those gaps are also closed from a legal perspective.
I must say, for me, looking at the idea of having Magdalene Munsami on the board says to me, she's young. That for me really stands out. You've got a young woman of color on the board. Hannes, what do you make of Magdalene Munsami?
Well, I think we shouldn't form any negative perceptions because she's been representing clients in court. I think I would agree that she's bringing some legal expertise, maybe not labor legal expertise, but in terms of the civil cases and the other matters that the SABC will deal with, she would be able to advise from that point of view. And yes, it is good to see younger people coming into the board, and we hope that they bring a perspective in terms of where we're heading as a broadcaster in a totally new digital world that maybe some of the older people are struggling to understand. She's been using social media quite effectively, and I think that those skills compared with the legal skills could be a benefit to the SABC board.
Yeah, then you've got Renee Horn. Thandi, I think you maybe share your thoughts on Renee Horn, and you're welcome to do so as well, Ndombi, who again has really been inside the media space and the SABC for a while. Do you want to go ahead first, Andy?
Yeah, I think, again, what we're seeing this time with the board nominations is a very broad level of skill, and the fact that we're seeing candidates who are young, who are female, is a very good, very positive move. And again, I think the fact that the board list wasn't taken to vote, that wasn't contested by all political parties, and that there was general agreement on all of the candidates speaks volumes to the expertise and the backgrounds of the candidates. And I think that's very notable. And so again, it's I don't want to just repeat what I've said, but it's so important to know that, it's one thing to have the skills, to see the background, experience, but the position of the SABC board, we know, is not an easy one.
Yeah.
We've seen, boards crumble. We've seen board members have very short stays at the SABC. So again, bringing that expertise into the board structure, we will see how the candidates perform once they take on their positions.
Anything for you?
I think on my side, purely because she's a woman, and we've seen a nice spread of, bringing in more women than before. There was 2 candidates shortlisted, and we got worried. Obviously, as a female, you would be jealous about, bringing in more women, in terms of when we talk about women empowerment. So I think with regards to her skill set, I think it will complement the other board members' skills as well, so that they are able to take this organization forward.
Okay, well, I want to move towards wrapping it up, but once they hit the ground running, right, what is it that they need to get right? And for the sake of stability of the organization that is the South African Broadcasting Corporation, Hannes?
Okay, so I'm glad that you asked that question. I think the very, very first thing that the new board must do is to look at staff morale at the SABC. Staff morale is at the lowest ever in the organization. The SABC is struggling to acquire talent from outside. They're struggling to keep those people. They come in, they leave the SABC. Not so long ago, there was a big meeting that was held in the marketing department, where we were told that big men broke out in tears in that meeting, crying about the working conditions at the SABC and the way that people are being treated. So I think the very first thing, because it doesn't matter what plans you put in place in any organization, if you have a demoralized staff at the SABC or in any organization, you are not going to take that organization forward. So I think that is the very, very first thing. We had a previous board that was anti-employees, so to speak. I think in the 5 years tenure of that board, it met twice, if my memory serves me well, with employee representatives. They were simply not interested in employees. We hope that this new board will take a different approach.
Yeah, Thandi, I know you wanted to touch on the issue of process, right? Certainly getting up to this point, we've had the delays and the vetting processes of the candidates themselves. Now we've got our 12 nominations, or the 12 recommended names. Talk to us a little bit about the importance of the process moving forward now.
Well, we still, even though we have the 12 names and we have the recommendations, we still don't have a board. The process is that the candidates get recommended to the National Assembly, which then needs to be signed off and approved by President Cyril Ramaphosa. And so that could be a few days, it could be weeks, and every delay that we have is yet another delay that the organization is without a board. I still believe that it's an absolute crisis that we don't have a board. Board appoints senior executive. What happens if we suddenly need senior executive to be appointed? Where does the buck stop? Who makes those appointments? What we don't want is any kind of political interference from the main shareholder, the Minister of Communications, and that to me is, again, when we talk about the board hitting the ground running, what we have to ensure is absolute independence and accountability within the board to not allow political interference to take control on an organization without a board.
Yeah, you can touch on the issue of urgency as well, but I think I'm going to also give you the same question I gave to Hannes. Priorities that the board needs to have when they do hit the ground?
I think I share the same sentiments as Hannes with regards to the workers. They become the key important asset of the organization. That's the first point, because then the SABC would not be weighed if there were no workers. Secondly is that as soon as they come in, those subcommittees of the board needs to urgently be constituted so that they can be able to take up the work and be able to start, finalizing the implementation of the strategy that was implemented in 2020. We are told that it's currently at 98%, but we're not necessarily seeing a lot of change, within the institution. So maybe the board may probably need to either improve on the strategy or probably try and come up with other new ways in trying to conclude the strategy.
Yes,
Thank you.
Thank you so much for coming in. I really, really appreciate the time that you've given us this morning as we try and look at the future of this important organization that is the SABC. Ndobi Kumalo there from the Communication Workers Union, Thandi Smith from Media Monitoring Africa, as well as Hannes de Buisson, who's the president of BEMAU. Thank you so much for watching Media and Society. We hope that you'll join us again next week, Sunday, same time, same place, right here on SABC News. For myself and the rest of the team, have yourselves a blessed Sunday.